Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. I want to talk today real quick about the topic of sanctuaries and specifically whether your property needs one. If you're hunting it really careful, where the deer don't know that you're hunting them, in theory and really for all practical purposes, you don't need a sanctuary because by default you're going to create sanctuaries in those areas that you can't hunt effectively. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail, Fuse Accessories, and Hoyt. So that's what I've done in the past on the farms that I've hunted. I've never really set out sanctuaries because I felt like by saying this area is the spot that I'm not going to hunt, that might be one of the areas on the property that's the easiest to hunt. The spots where you could get in there and hunt it and get out of there without the deer knowing. So for that reason, I've always said no. It doesn't make sense to have sanctuaries. The sanctuaries sort of happen by default. They're the spots that you can't hunt well. But there are situations where I probably need to rethink that, especially small properties. It probably goes counterintuitive, but the smaller the property, the more important it is to have a sanctuary because the deer have to feel comfortable enough there to move during daylight, which means that you can't go into their core areas and hunt them in those spots. So by just hunting a small property correctly, just hunting around the fringes, you create more of an internal kind of a sanctuary. So right behind me is our home property, and it's 14 acres. And my daughter and I hunted that last year for 4 days. And we did see some deer movement, and the whole trick that we came up with was we just had to hunt the little alleyways leading in and out of this property. We couldn't go into the areas that seemed like they had the most deer sign, maybe the spots where the deer bedded, because you put too much pressure on them and then they're gone. And on such a small property, you can't afford that because you don't have options. You can't burn out one spot and then move on to another. On bigger properties, it isn't quite as critical because, like I said, you can maybe hunt a little bit more aggressively and get away with it. But even then, I always felt like on even that big property that we own in southern Iowa, I always felt like 80% of that, 75 to 80% of that farm, I wasn't even hunting. And that's because those spots were too hard to hunt effectively. Either the entry and exit was too tough, or once you got in there, the wind swirled. One way or another, those were locations that I didn't feel like I could hunt without the deer knowing it. So by default, they became the sanctuaries, and I only hunted the areas that I felt like I could hunt consistently, again, without the deer knowing. So yeah, I don't think you really need a sanctuary unless you're hunting the farm too aggressively and you're going into spots, or maybe family members or somebody else are going into spots that are just too sensitive, or if you're hunting small properties. Those are my two exceptions. Otherwise, I just feel like you only hunt those spots that make sense and let the whole rest of the property be a sanctuary. In fact, if you're hunting it carefully enough where the deer don't know that you're hunting them, the whole property is a sanctuary. Because by definition, that's what a sanctuary is. It's an area where the deer don't know that they're being hunted, or they actually aren't being hunted. So hopefully that helps you out. You might be able to rearrange your property. Don't take those spots that make sense to hunt and turn those into sanctuaries. If you're gonna have sanctuaries, always make those the spots that are super hard to hunt. The spots where you can't get into, the spots that you can't hunt effectively without the deer knowing. Got one more item I want to mention here, and that is this new t-shirt that I'm wearing. Jordan designed a new one. I'll show you the back. It's pretty cool. It's called Tagged Out. So you can find that and a few other designs at our website, shop.bowhuntingwhitetails.com. Well, I appreciate you joining me this week. We'll see you right back here again for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream big.